Welcome back to the Space School, otherwise known as PBSW, your favorite hangout place, and today we're back with another Star Wars story. Today we're going to take a look at what would have happened had the Jedi's Chosen One gone to Mandalore with his former apprentice, Ahsoka Tano, in the waning hours of the Clone Wars. Could Anakin Skywalker have changed the outcome of the Clone Wars, or would the fate be the same as Sidious wipes out the Jedi Order? Before we begin this video, let's smash that like button and try and shoot for 2,000 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will release What If Ahsoka Tano Raised Luke and Leia Skywalker. This is a video you won't want to miss. We are also gunning for 50,000 subscribers, so join the Space Gulag if you want to be a part of our incredible journey together. If you have ideas for videos, leave them down below. I do read all your comments, but I don't do crossovers. And one last thing, if you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon, Twitch, and community Discord. Special shout out to George Story and Benjamin Wells for being Grand Tier supporters, and Jay Hoffman is a Master of the Tier supporter on our Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, guys. You are helping fund massive projects in the future. And if you want to learn how to win a free lightsaber, watch to the end of the video and I will tell you how. Our story begins as Ahsoka is brought on board a Venator-class Star Destroyer. She's been out of the Jedi Order for months. She hasn't seen her master, Obi Wan, or the clones, or R2-D2, since she was barred from the Jedi Order. She was a bit nervous, of course, but she was here on a special mission. She was being accompanied by Mandalorians, whose planet had just been ravaged by infighting. For Ahsoka, she knew little of what was going on, but she did understand what Bo-Katan told her. That Satine was killed, Maul took over, and the Mandalorians had engaged in civil war. While Bo-Katan left out some crucial information like how she rallied Death Watch against her own sister, she did make sure that Ahsoka was aware that Mandalore was in need of help from the Jedi. The briefings would continue as they did canonically, where Obi-Wan and Bo-Katan would show off. Ahsoka, though, would have the pleasure of catching up with her master. Being back with him was such a joyful undertaking for her. She did really care about him, and as did he for her. They were like a tight bond, almost like siblings, and they began to interact again as if there was no time that passed in between their previous interaction. They picked up right where they left off. Of course, Anakin had to spoil Ahsoka first. He took her down to where the men of the 501st were. First, Rex and the boys who served with her had a surprise for her. They painted all their helmets to match her birth crest across her face. It was a sign of loyalty and respect for someone that they had served with for so long. Ahsoka was obviously pleasantly thrilled by this. It was a kind gesture, but it wasn't all that was in store for her. Anakin pulled a small box out from behind his back and held it in front of himself. Ahsoka looked down at it. It could be a million things, but even she knew what he was holding inside of it, and it was two lightsabers. Anakin had made a snarky remark telling her that, well, they were better, as she ignited them. She sheathed them, but before she could say anything, a door opened, and Obi-Wan ran out, as the ship's alarms began to ring. Both Anakin and Ahsoka assumed that it was the invasion of Mandalore being approved. Though it had been approved, the fleet was preparing to go to Coruscant because the Separatists made a striking move to capture the Chancellor of the Republic. Ahsoka was quick to rebuttal what Obi-Wan said, and they began a heated discourse. It wouldn't take long until Anakin broke the silence, telling the two of them that he would split the 501st up, as he would accompany Ahsoka to Mandalore with Oppo, and Commander Rex would follow Kenobi to Coruscant. It was an easy fix to the debacle. Obi-Wan sighed, but it would work. So, he gave Anakin the go-ahead, and then warned both of them to capture Maul, because he never liked to stay dead. The fleet split up, as the 501st under Commander Oppo, Anakin and Ahsoka made their way to Mandalore, as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Commander Rex, and Commander Cody made their way to Coruscant. The war was on the verge of ending, and they needed to see to it that the war ended in favor of the Republic. Everything hung in the balance. If this operation wasn't done correctly, the Chancellor could cost the Republic massively. Because Obi-Wan didn't have Anakin to accompany him, he called into the Jedi Temple. He needed reinforcements, and the Jedi Council prepared what forces they had to aid Obi-Wan and his mission to rescue the Chancellor. It would cut their forces thin on the ground, but it would ensure that the Republic had a chance of winning this battle and this war. Two Jedi were on their way to aid Kenobi when he got to Coruscant. Similarly, the journey to Mandalore was as far as the journey to Coruscant. Anakin and Ahsoka loaded into gunships as they begun their descent down to the surface of Mandalore. Over Coruscant, Obi Wan flew alone in his red starfighter over some Venators as it met up with green and purple starfighters over the massive battle-scarred space of Coruscant. 3 Jedi starfighters converged on one another as they blasted through the combat with precise speed and concentration. At the same time, flak came in as Anakin and Ahsoka looked at each other. Anakin, in the short period since Ahsoka left the temple, doubled in power and was even more cunning of a warrior. Mandalorians jumped from LAATs and entered flight combat with other Mandalorians as clones shot at Maul's men, who flew into the air to meet the Republic head-on. It wouldn't be long before both Anakin and Ahsoka had to find other motives to get down to the ground. Both of them found their way down, saving those who they could while they were going. Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and Saesee Tiin on the other side of the galaxy landed on the inside of the invisible hand. 3 Jedi, 3 different lightsaber colors, as they cut down battle droids blue, green, and purple, moving effortlessly through battle droids. The Jedi sensed that Count Dooku was on board the ship, and they decided that it would be best if they stuck together. Dooku was aging, and the dark side of the Force was slowly killing his fragile old body. It was common for those who joined the dark side late in life to be overtaken by the true power of darkness. That evil would harm the person's body until it began to fall apart. This was the case for Dooku. It was beginning to rummage throughout his body, causing failure at every turn. But it didn't mean he was any worse of a duelist. It simply meant that the dark side would corrode him until he died. The Jedi were on their guard. The Invisible Hand was also the capital ship of General Grievous. It was very likely that he was also present on the ship. As for Anakin and Ahsoka, who had raced to the surface, like they always had, also had the ever so dull Captain Oppo in tow. Ahsoka was good, but Anakin was cocky and eager as ever as he beat her to the surface, commanding troops as they landed before him. Anakin was more sure than ever in his abilities to succeed in the moment. He walked along, then ignited his lightsaber once Ahsoka caught up, and then followed his men into battle. Captain Appa was right behind as ARC Trooper Jesse led an assault into the lower levels of the city, while topside the Republic was crushing Mandalorians, and the comm chatter had it that Bo-Katan beat Olmec in the throne room. Anakin and Ahsoka ventured down into the underground of Mandalore's capital city together, after hearing that ARC Trooper Jesse and a squad of men had gone missing down below. Inside the Invisible Hand, the 3 Jedi discovered Palpatine. He was sitting in a small chair overlooking the battle over Coruscant. The sight was eerie, but the feeling within the Force reeked of the dark side. Of course, it could be Dooku, but it of course could also be Palpatine himself. The war hadn't been adding up. More and more of it felt as if what Dooku had told Obi Wan 3 years ago on Geonosis was a direct reference to Sidious, or to Palpatine. Why the Jedi never capitalized off of it only proved to Dooku how arrogant they had become, how foolish they really were. Though he never really blamed Kenobi for this decision to stay with the Jedi. It wasn't Qui-Gon's fault either, but it was the fault of the Order itself. They had become too politicized, and it separated them from the people of the galaxy that so desperately depended on them. The 3 Jedi marched their way down the stairs, keeping an open eye out for Count Dooku or General Grievous. Saesee Tiin walked over and released the Chancellor from his handcuffs, and then the Jedi turned when they heard the sound of clanking. 6 Magna Guards, followed by General Grievous and Count Dooku. Windu was in the middle, surrounded by his fellow Jedi Masters, Kenobi and Saesee Tiin. They gathered themselves together for this epic battle. The lines were drawn. Each Jedi had their own respective combatant. The Magna Guards jumped into action immediately as Dooku and Grievous stood atop the balcony to watch. Kenobi, Windu, and Tiin jumped into attack position, defending the Jedi next to them as they each took on 2 of the Magna Guards. Mace was an incredible duelist as he crushed 2 of the droids and then a third, as Kenobi finished off 2 of them and Saesee finished off the other. Windu looked at Dooku from below and pointed his lightsaber towards the fallen Jedi. Windu was incredibly bothered, even haunted by his inability to make a single decision that could have shortened the entire Clone Wars. On Geonosis, the first battle of Geonosis that is, Mace Windu could have killed Count Dooku and ended this destructive conflict before hundreds of Jedi were killed and millions were put into fear because of the droid armies. It genuinely kept Windu up at night. He could have changed everything if he had just killed someone he used to consider a close friend. Sure, it wasn't the Jedi way, but it could have prevented the worst war since the ancient times. Windu walked forward as Grievous and Dooku simultaneously ignited their lightsabers, preparing for the duel of the war. Both had a lot to win from this. If the Separatists killed the 3 Jedi, Anakin would lose his mentor, and even more, the Chancellor would be captured. On the flip side, the entire Separatist war effort would crumble if these 2 duelists died. Windu walked halfway up the steps as he and his former friend clashed blades. Meanwhile, General Grievous would meet blades with Saesee Tiin as Obi Wan ran over to assist him. The 2 Jedi clashed against the Jedi killer of the Clone Wars, while on the other side of the room, Count Dooku and Windu interlocked in battle. Windu used Vapad, pushing back against Dooku. Saesee and Obi-Wan held their own against Grievous. While Obi-Wan and Grievous had their own sort of rivalry, Saesee Tiin was a better duelist than most in the Order gave him credit for. Obi-Wan was quick to block as Grievous locked blades with both Jedi as he opened up 2 more of his arms and ignited 2 more lightsabers. The Jedi jumped back as Kenobi and Saesee got on their defensive positions. Kenobi knew how to best defend against General Grievous, as he took a bit of a forward position, trying to edge Grievous to come after him. Windu and Dooku continued to duke it out as their blades clashed, and Windu seized an upper hand as he shoved Dooku back, and the Sith apprentice fell over his own feet, toppling backwards to the ground and dropping his lightsaber. Windu made a snide remark about the dark side being more powerful as Dooku yielded from combat. Grievous on the other side of the room saw this in the middle of his own duel with the 2 Jedi Masters, as Kenobi and Saesee simultaneously cut off one of Grievous's hands while he was distracted. Windu held a blade to Dooku's neck and got into contact with the 501st. He wanted LAAT gunships inside of the hangar bays of the Invisible Hand immediately. They had precious cargo that needed to be ensured safe passage back to Coruscant. With the Republic fleet alerted to the importance of the Invisible Hand, making sure to block off escape routes and any other sort of mobility away from the combat zone. Inside of the Invisible Hand, Windu looked over at his counterparts as they pushed Grievous back into a corner. He fought with every ounce of bravery, courage, or strength he had left. He was once a proud warrior, torn apart by Dooku, now facing death at the hands of the Jedi, whom he resented. Grievous tried his best, but Saesee Tiin and Obi-Wan were too much for him, as they cut the droid general to the ground. Obi-Wan and Saesee looked over at Windu, who had gotten Dooku to surrender. Their mission was half completed by this point. They needed only to get Dooku and Palpatine off the Invisible Hand. Palpatine would have loved to use this moment to turn Anakin to the dark side, but that devious little Torgruta ruined all of his plans. It was no wonder why he wanted the slavers to wipe out their entire civilization off the face of the galaxy. Back inside the capital city on Mandalore, Anakin and Ahsoka held their lightsabers ignited as they slowly paced down the sewers of the Mandalorian city. There was so much opportunity for an ambush, but these men, led by Appo and Captain Vong, were prepared and trained. They were coordinated and their formations would not break. Appo was with Ahsoka, and Vong was with Anakin. Mandalorians from down the tunnels opened fire, but the men rallied as they fired back. Anakin and Ahsoka kept the men in line as they blocked back blaster fire and threw missiles in the walls away from the men. Anakin pushed forward as his men trailed behind him. He was a powerful leader, and his sturdy, confident stance inspired the men to keep their wits about them. A clearing could be seen and screaming could be heard. Ahsoka and Appo darted for the opening, as Anakin and Vong did the same. They were so close to the mouth of the sewers, and then, when they converged on the opening, they saw him. Anakin hadn't seen the Horned Man since Naboo, since Qui-Gon Jinn died. Part of him still resented Maul for killing the first fatherly figure he ever had in his life. A part of him still wanted revenge, but he had to be better than that. He was with Ahsoka after all. Anakin and Ahsoka stepped out into the light from the opening, and Maul looked up. He smiled. He laughed to himself. The time wasn't right. Not yet. But finally, Anakin was here. Skywalker was the one whom Maul wanted, but this time, to exact revenge against Sidious was not. Maul kept muttering about this Darth Sidious. Anakin heard the name from the reputation as he tried to ask Maul about the name. Maul snarled that the time wasn't now. They needed to meet later. Maul turned and ran as the Mandalorians surrounding him followed. The Force wasn't in perfect position yet. Maul had all of this planned out. While he didn't know to the extent of which Sidious would go to succeed, he did know that there was a plan, and that plan did involve Skywalker. Anakin and Ahsoka looked at each other. Maul couldn't be caught. They had to force the Mandalorians out, into the streets for one final fight. Anakin and Ahsoka made their way back up to the surface of the planet, where Bo-Katan was waiting to inform them of Olmec. When she fought Olmec, she was made aware that Maul was looking for Skywalker, but Bo didn't care to ask why, for whichever reason. Anakin couldn't stand her ineptitude, but he wanted to get to Olmec and find out why it was that Maul wanted him. Something was unnerving about this trip to Mandalore. Of course, he didn't know that Kenobi, Windu, and Tin had successfully won the war for the Republic at this point, but everything regarding Mandalore felt like a setup. Of course, Anakin knew he was the chosen one, and regardless of his battle savvy or his reckless decision-making, he was humbled by being the chosen one. When Anakin and Ahsoka went to visit Olmec, with the guidance of Bo-Katan, Anakin set up security everywhere. He wanted to know why Maul was looking for him. He didn't fear Maul, but something didn't feel right within the Force about this. He didn't know if the Sith Lord was preying on him, or if he had anything to do with his wife, who, at this point, he didn't realize she was pregnant. Anakin wasn't having nightmares about Padme at this point either. Rather, he was still entirely focused on the war effort. Olmec tried to play hard to get when Anakin lifted him up with the Force and threw him against the wall, demanding answers. Ahsoka was always a little taken aback when Anakin did this. It wasn't common within the Jedi Order to act so erratically, especially with prisoners of war. But Anakin had a tendency to not be the nicest interrogator, more so a bad cop routine, though on the flip side it always garnered him the response and answers that he was looking for. Olmec was back against the wall, floating in air, though he wasn't being force-choked. Anakin wasn't at that stage of anger yet, but then Olmec revealed everything, telling Anakin that Maul had a vision, and that vision had a name in it. The name Skywalker came to him. Maul had been obsessing over the name for months, orchestrating this entire thing to bring Anakin here to kill him, as revenge against his master. After that, Olmec had no more information to relay. He didn't know anything else regarding Darth Maul and what he had planned for Anakin Skywalker. Ahsoka looked at her master. She was concerned, afraid that Maul would try and kill him. Anakin, on the other hand, wanted to get to the bottom of this. He wanted to know why Maul wanted to kill him, and what Anakin had to do with Darth Sidious. Because otherwise it made no sense for Anakin to be revenge against the Sith Lord. It would rather be a gift to the Sith to kill the Jedi Chosen One. Maul, of course, had one motive in mind. It was behind everything he did. Every operation, every grand scheme, it was all to get back at his former master, Darth Sidious. Anakin and Ahsoka left the prison block and made their way up to the operation room. They had a briefing with the Jedi, and Anakin needed to inform the Jedi of everything that had happened on Mandalore. Because Anakin wasn't on Coruscant, a whole line of things don't happen. And two of the most crucial of those things is Palpatine doesn't appoint Anakin to the High Council, and Anakin doesn't become fearful of his wife dying in childbirth. Anakin's mind was clear. Of course, he had the option to go to Coruscant with Obi Wan, but he was hoping that Ahsoka would join the ranks of the Jedi Order again, finally becoming a knight and joining him side by side where he always wanted her to be. Anakin didn't deal with her leaving the Order well, and while it could be seen as a selfish motivation, Anakin always wanted what was best for her. When the two reached the operations room, they got into communication with the Jedi Council. A lot had happened since Anakin last spoke to Master Kenobi. Since they had separated, Kenobi and the two Jedi who accompanied him killed General Grievous and captured Count Dooku, while also delivering the Chancellor back to safety at the Senate building. Though, for the Jedi, there was something odd, something off, something mysterious within the Force. The Jedi Council had the option to send all of its best leaders across the galaxy to end the war, but something within the Force dissuaded them from doing so, especially with the entire Separatist command structure being crippled. The Jedi Council gathered all of its members back on Coruscant, sending out other masters in place, though some of those clone legions were also sent on the offensive as well. As Anakin and Ahsoka listened in, the Jedi informed them of everything that had happened. Both Anakin and Ahsoka were in shock, but the war seemed to be closer to an end than ever before. Though the Jedi Council members wanted to make it abundantly clear that they were staying on Coruscant, while the war outside the planet was being completed by capable Jedi generals and capable clone battalions. Anakin was curious as to why that was. Yoda disclosed that the Force felt awry, especially with Dooku being kept inside the Jedi Temple. The plot to destroy the Jedi seemed clearer than ever. Anakin also had information to reveal to the Jedi Council. He told them that though the Battle of Mandalore was successful, he had interacted with Darth Maul. He explained that Maul wanted to bring Anakin to Mandalore to kill him, so that the one named Sidious couldn't have a new apprentice. It seemed as if Dooku was a short-term solution, and Anakin was a long-term solution. And while Anakin and Ahsoka hadn't discovered all the information that Maul had to offer, they thought it extremely important to finish the siege of Mandalore and capture Maul, so that the Jedi could garner all the information they needed regarding the Sith Lord. Yoda would then ask Ahsoka if she would like to rejoin the ranks of the Jedi Order. It was a final request before the call ended after the entire briefing was finished. Ahsoka brought her hands to her lips, just like Kenobi would, and thought momentarily. She then looked her eyes over to her former master. Ahsoka thought on this for a bit, but when her decision leaned towards a solid no, she turned to the council and told them that she would like to be welcomed back to the Order. While she would have said no again, she knew how much Anakin needed this. She also believed that with the war coming to an end, she would be more helpful within the ranks of the Jedi Order than not. When she spent time with the people in the lower levels of Coruscant, she understood how much the Jedi meant to the people of the galaxy. They were what the people looked to in times of desperation. Anakin was completely in shock of Ahsoka's response, and he looked over at his former student with glee on his face. Yoda was happy to welcome Ahsoka back into the ranks of the Jedi Order. She would be a Jedi Knight once she returned to Coruscant. Yoda's joy from this wasn't for himself. He was already worried about everything else, and of course the Sith grand plan for the return. But Yoda was truly happy for this moment for Anakin. Yoda wanted Anakin to be happy the entire time, and he made that clear when he assigned Ahsoka to Anakin instead of Obi Wan. Yoda really only wanted the best for Anakin, and once Ahsoka left, he didn't know what to do or how to help him. The Jedi Council welcomed back Ahsoka into the Order with open arms, and then wished that the Force be with the two of them as they finish up their siege of Mandalore. Anakin looked over at Ahsoka when the call ended, and he smiled so much you could see tears in his eyes. Anakin was so unbelievably happy. He felt like he had failed her, and he felt so happy that he truly hadn't. In some way, shape, or form, Anakin in his mind saw it as Ahsoka had to leave the temple so that the Republic could become closer to victory. Then she would rejoin, and peace would be brought back to the galaxy. Sure, it was a childish mindset, maybe even a little simple-minded, but if it made Anakin happy, then it worked. Ahsoka was happy to be back within the Order as well. She had no life outside the Order. She wandered and found herself in and out of trouble here and there. For the most part, she tried to help. Anakin and Ahsoka would get back into the mindset of generals, as they prepped the city for one final stand against the Mandalorians. This final stand would be a bloody conflict, and they couldn't risk the civilians getting hurt by this battle. Back on Coruscant, Count Dooku would be brought before the Jedi Council. He would be tried or executed, but the Jedi needed to be sure and know what it was that he knew. And even more so, they needed to know who it was that he served. There was no point to reciting this, but Dooku would. His motivations were unclear, but there was one thing that was for certain. He feared the Dark Lord of the Sith, and the plan that he had in place to wipe out the Jedi from existence. Anakin and Ahsoka would make their way to the throne room on Mandalore, where they would encounter Darth Maul once again. Instead of jumping directly into combat, Anakin spoke up, demanding that Maul disclose why he wanted him. There had to be a good reason as to why Maul wanted Skywalker. Maul again laughed to himself like a madman. Without saying a word, he stood up from the throne itself and walked over to the middle of the room and looked down Skywalker. Sure, Anakin looked to be a powerful duelist, but even to Maul this felt like a downgrade. Of course, being the Jedi's chosen one was a nice leverage for Palpatine to be interested in the boy, and then he snapped out of it. All of his internal monologue when he heard 3 lightsabers ignite. Maul looked over at the Jedi. They demanded to know what it was that he wanted with Skywalker. Maul laughed again, like a psycho. Anakin was the key to everything. Anakin lowered his blade and looked at Maul with confusion and then asked if it were to bring balance to the Force. Maul then shook his head as if he expected Anakin to get the answer right on the first try. It obviously wasn't that. Anakin's purpose was to destroy the balance. Maul turned his full attention towards Skywalker, lifting his hand, telling him that his master, Lord Sidious, had been grooming him to become an apprentice ever since the death of Qui-Gon. Anakin's anger bellowed as he looked at Maul through his eyebrows. Anakin began to raise his blade when he told Maul that he was not groomed. Maul snickered to himself when he turned around to look at Anakin, telling him to listen to him. On the other side of the galaxy, the Jedi were getting information they desired from Count Dooku. He had nothing to hide, and it was all out of the box. At the same time, 2 different former apprentices to Darth Sidious spoke the words, saying in precise unison as if it was rehearsed, "Darth Sidious is Chancellor Palpatine." Mirroring one another, the Jedi Council and Anakin and Ahsoka's jaws dropped to the floor. The information was galaxy-shattering. Anakin looked at Ahsoka and told her to get in contact with the Jedi Council immediately. The motivations of every being was completely different than ever before. The Jedi Council, while still being arrogant, had the patience of a true Jedi, as they silenced themselves from gallivanting across the galaxy to find true victory. The capture of Count Dooku humbled their motivations for victory. While Dooku, being trapped by the Jedi against Admiral Tarkin's demands, found it better to keep Dooku inside the Jedi Temple for interrogation. Palpatine also wasn't entirely fond of this operation, but he did have a resolution if Dooku revealed his plans. With multiple clone legions on planet, Order 66 could prove to wipe out the Jedi, though most of the major legions had been sent off-world under the command of other Jedi generals, though there was still the Coruscant Guard, and they were a formidable force, all combined especially. The motivations of Maul were still unclear, but he wanted to recruit Anakin to become his apprentice, yet he didn't anticipate Ahsoka on being here. Maul wanted to turn Anakin to the dark side so that he could use Anakin to overthrow and kill Sidious. Sure, it was a long shot, but maybe it'd work. As for Anakin, he had no reason to turn to the dark side. In his mind, the war was almost over. Padme wasn't pregnant, and the galaxy was going to be restored to peace. Though, the Jedi now were aware that Sidious was a Sith Lord, and they had to act fast. They didn't know what Sidious was capable of doing, and when Ahsoka called into the Jedi Temple, they demanded that she keep Skywalker far away from Coruscant for as long as she could. Ahsoka didn't understand why the Jedi were so paranoid about Anakin. It kind of made her upset that they just assumed he might turn on a whim. But it was Mace Windu that they were talking about. The Jedi were so obviously a little bit skeptical about what Count Dooku and his intentions were. It was very possible that Dooku could be just trying to overthrow the Republic and throw it into the midst of a civil war, by having the Jedi kill the Chancellor himself. Though, with Maul's word, it was extremely plausible that Palpatine was in fact Sidious. As for Sidious, who was inside of his office, he didn't know all this was happening, but he was preparing his backup plan in case the Jedi decided to come for him. On Mandalore, Anakin was a bit upset that Maul said Palpatine was the Sith Lord. He wanted to rebuke the statement, but how could he? Everything Maul said was right. From their first interaction on Coruscant to watching his career with great interest at the celebration of the Naboo, everything seemed as if Anakin was being manipulated. Anakin's self-reflection continued, while Maul watched closely, his yellow, piercing eyes focusing on Anakin, who was so focused on his emotions and feelings in this moment. Could his mentor, friend, really have been manipulating him? It made Anakin lose faith in not just the Chancellor, but the Jedi as well. If he couldn't trust Palpatine, could he trust anybody? Maul then spoke up, breaking Anakin's concentration, to which Maul asked Anakin if he would join him. Anakin looked down at his lightsaber, and then said that he wouldn't, but he also wouldn't fight him. There was no purpose, the prophecy of the Chosen One, or anything else. Everything felt like a setup. Anakin was just a slave to whichever side he was on. Sure, he was destined to be the most powerful being in the galaxy, but was that worth it? Was it worth everything he was feeling in this moment? Maul watched Anakin as he sheathed his blade and turned around, looking at Ahsoka. She knew he wasn't well. Maul looked down at his blade, which was still on his belt, and then looked back to Ahsoka and Anakin. If Anakin wouldn't join him, he began to run and leap into the air, then he would die. Maul ignited his lightsaber as Ahsoka jumped to protect Anakin by using the Force to throw Maul across the room, crashing into the throne room of the former Duchess Satine. Anakin turned around and looked at Maul, who was getting back up, and then looked at Ahsoka. His emotions were bent out of sort. He ignited his blade. He would protect Ahsoka, but as for the Jedi, he didn't know if he could trust them anymore. The Jedi on Coruscant mobilized the Jedi Temple for any incoming attacks, Jedi Temple guards and Master Sindralic for any possible attack that could happen. Sindralic had no idea, but he was ready. The Jedi across the galaxy were being briefed to be on their highest alert, as anything could change within an instant of the Jedi showing up within the Senate building. First, a Jedi would be sent to talk to Padme and her coalition of Organa and Mothma about Palpatine and anything they could do to remove him from power without having to take violent steps. The entire Jedi Council would be departed from the Jedi Temple, while Masters Shaak Ti and Agan Kolar went to confront the senators of Padme's peaceful coalition. These senators were out to stop the Republic war machine, and they wanted to ensure that the galaxy would find itself in a time of peace again. Palpatine wasn't that resolution, and they all knew it. If Anakin were on the planet, Padme would have asked him to assist her and her coalition with confronting Palpatine about the war effort and bringing it to an end. The Jedi Council gathered around the outside of the Senate building, on the landing deck, as they ordered all ships to be banned from coming and or going to the Senate building, while the two Jedi Masters confronted the senators. Anakin and Ahsoka stood side by side. They stared down the evil Darth Maul, who stood across from them. He was angry, but he wasn't anything compared to Anakin, let alone the comprised power of Anakin and Ahsoka. They looked at each other, and then the Maul. He knew he wouldn't be able to beat them both, as he looked for an escape route. The shadows of explosions echoed outside the throne room, as the capital of Mandalore was besieged by the Mandalorians and the Republic, who sought to liberate the people from the oppression of the Sith. The battle commenced as Appo and Vong defended their men and forced their armies into heated combat with the Mandalorians, who were clearly outmanned and outmatched. The clones were fine combatants, and they really were an unstoppable force. Maul, upstairs in the throne room, swung his blade as he twisted towards Anakin and Ahsoka. Anakin pushed Ahsoka out of the way as he blocked Maul's attack. He looked over to make sure that she was okay, and she was, so then he turned his attention back to the Sith. Maul swung back and forth with his double-sided lightsaber. Anakin blocked every assault, as then he pushed his offensive back against Maul. He was a powerful duelist. He could have beaten Dooku, but Maul was no Dooku when it came to dueling. Maul then felt the advantage shift as Anakin swung his blade, slashing at Maul where he could, until Maul's blade was cut into pieces as Maul toppled backwards, and Anakin pointed his blade at Maul's throat, making him yield from combat. Inside of Padme's office, she told the two Jedi that the Senate needed to request for executive orders to be enacted. It would require a Senate meeting without the Chancellor present. The Jedi looked at each other. They could do this, but it had to be done now. The Jedi needed to keep Palpatine busy, while the Senate made sure that he was removed from power. Agan Kolar told Shaak Ti that he would have Count Dooku brought to the Senate building, while the Jedi Council kept Palpatine inside of his office. Padme, on the other hand, sent out a message to all senators calling for an emergency meeting inside of the Senate chambers, suggesting that they have a removal of Palpatine from office, with evidence presented that he was behind the Clone Wars and the invasion of Naboo. Inside of the Jedi Temple, two Temple guards grabbed Count Dooku from his cell, as they brought him to Agan Kolar and Plo Koon, who accompanied him, to pick up Dooku. Everything was set in motion for a quick and decisive victory over the Sith. The Jedi moved in quickly, making sure that they did anything they could to stop Palpatine from doing anything radical and keeping him preoccupied. At this point, Palpatine assumed the Jedi didn't get any information from Dooku, though the Force was telling him something was off. He didn't, at the moment, know what it was that was going on in the Force. As the senators gathered inside of the Senate chamber, Masters Shakti, Plo Koon, and Agan Caller entered the empty Senate pod and brought Dooku before a completely full Senate chamber. The Senate was outraged at why the Jedi would bring one of their own or one of their former members before them, but as Plo Koon moved to the podium, he spoke before hundreds of members, telling them that the Jedi had just learned of a deceit, a massive deception, by the Chancellor to obtain unlimited power in the galaxy. He stated that the invasion of Naboo, which happened almost a decade beforehand, was a planned deceit by Palpatine. If the Senate removed the Chancellor from power, the galaxy could be saved from more turmoil and more war. The Senate had a debate for the Jedi because of Dooku, but they listened as Dooku spoke in front of the Senate and told them everything that had occurred from his perspective. He told them that when he left the Order, he left for personal reasons based on the Jedi and how close they got to the politics of the galaxy. As for joining the ranks of Palpatine, he was manipulated by the power of the dark side. It, of course, was a trick to steal Palpatine's thunder. Dooku had secretly been planning this since day one. He never cared about the Sith, he just wanted to destroy them. Of course, he never wanted to rejoin the Jedi, but if he could get rid of the galaxy's evil, then he would be doing something right. This was the moment to save the galaxy. Dooku then pulled out a small hologram. He then ignited it, a tiny red beacon, as it shone before his eyes and the entire Senate on a larger screen. They were all puzzled at what it was, but it was the schematics for a superweapon with enough power to blow up an entire star system. Dooku told the galaxy that it was Palpatine who wanted this to be done. The Sith were truly behind everything, and then people started shouting out, calling for the execution of Order 65. All the clone legions needed to be made aware of this. Palpatine felt the changing tide within the Force as he looked at the Jedi and requested them a moment alone. The Jedi, trying not to give him any reason to suspect anything, looked at each other, stood up, and walked out of the room. Palpatine could do one thing. It may not buy him time to escape, but the second the doors closed, he called Commander Fox and requested the execution of Order 66. The Jedi heard this order and wondered what it was. Windu sent Fisto to the Senate chambers to find out what it was that the Jedi had just entered the room for. Fisto ran with all of his heart and speed as his robe floated behind him. He ran towards the Senate chamber and then jumped on a pod, shooting it out into the middle of the Senate chamber. He called everyone's attention, but Fisto spoke quickly as he tried to catch his breath. He asked, no, he demanded to know what Order 66 was. The Senate gasped. It was the removal of all Jedi officers with force. The Senate was leaning against Palpatine, but this furthered their decision to Order 65. The Senate itself would overrule Palpatine's command if they had a 2/3 majority vote, though they wouldn't have to worry about a 2/3 majority vote when 90% of the Senate voted to execute Order 65. On the steps of the Jedi Temple, Sindralik looked down as he saw the Coruscant Guard marching towards him. The Jedi prepared themselves for an assault. This could be the fight of their lives on the steps of the Jedi Temple that they grew up in. The men of the Coruscant Guard kept on marching, full direction towards the Jedi Temple. Commander Fox then stopped as he pulled out his comlink with Senator Amidala on it. She told him that the Order 65 was nullifying Order 66. Fox stopped immediately in his tracks. Sindralik was 20 steps away. The temple was close to being in the midst of the greatest battle since the Sith Empire had returned. Fox turned and looked at his men. He then looked back up at the Jedi who stood before him. The inhibitor chips were being overloaded. They were meant to focus on Order 66, but having two different orders interact with the chips simultaneously threw them off. The programming was overloaded and the chips deactivated with the men. Padme then continued as she looked at Fox from the Senate pod, telling him that Chancellor Palpatine was to remove from office. If he did not comply, it had to be done with force. Senators across the Senate chamber informed clones on every battlefront that Executive Order 65 was now active. Their specific order were to be obeyed. The Senate, and the 90% of the vote, nullified Chancellor Palpatine's power as Supreme Chancellor. On Mandalore, Anakin and Ahsoka watched as their men finished combat with the Mandalorians, and they took Maul into custody, leaving Mandalore with Bo-Katan tragically in charge of the system. She wasn't the leader her sister was, but the Mandalorians could always hope for the best after their capital city was torn to shreds by the war that Bo-Katan helped start. As for Anakin, the Darksaber belonged to him, though he wouldn't take it. He gave it over to Bo-Katan to rule the city and the Mandalorians, in respect of her sister and the woman that Obi Wan loved. Inside of the Senate offices where the Jedi were still gathered, Palpatine was getting restless. The Jedi Temple wasn't burning, and the Jedi hadn't done anything alarming. All that changed when Commander Fox and a group of Coruscant Guard men walked in, demanding that Palpatine be removed from power for committing high treason against the Galactic Republic, and that he was to be taken into custody. He looked at the clones, then to the Jedi. He had to run. He ignited his lightsabers and jumped out the windows. He couldn't take on all these Jedi by himself. When he jumped, Windu, Yoda, Fistu, Mundi, Saci, Kenobi all lifted their hands and grabbed Palpatine with the Force. He couldn't go anywhere. The clones who were obeying their mandate to the Republic shot Palpatine while he was held in air by the Jedi. While the Jedi didn't plan for this, they brought him back inside the office and placed him down gently, as the clones surrounded him, making sure he was dead by pumping him full of laser bolts. The Jedi knew the Sith were extinguished. Communications came in that Maul was en route to Coruscant after being captured by Anakin and Ahsoka. Dooku, on the other hand, was released immediately by the Jedi into the custody of the Coruscant Guard. He was stunned by the clones as he was dragged back to a holding cell. 2 Jedi would accompany the clones, ensuring that he wouldn't be freed by any intention of his own. The Senate, which was still in session, decided they needed to orchestrate themselves a new power, one that couldn't take over the galaxy like Palpatine almost had. At the same time, Maul was stuck in a Mandalorian Force user prison, one that inhibited all of his abilities as a Force user. Maul was terrified of what would happen to him. He knew the Jedi, or someone, had killed Palpatine, and while that was all fine and good, he wasn't sure of what the Jedi were going to do to him as they captured him. The Jedi would gather back inside the Jedi Temple and await for Anakin and Ahsoka to return, with Maul in custody. When he returned, the Jedi Council would request Maul down to the loading docks, where he would be sentenced to a life in carbon freezing, never to see the light of day again. Dooku would also face the same penalty as Maul, but the Republic would lock him away elsewhere. For the Republic, they would outlaw the existence of the Sith forever. Their religion was never allowed to exist ever again. Anakin, on the other side, requested to talk to Master Yoda before he went back to Padme. Yoda is very concerned with the well-being of Anakin, and he always wanted the best for him. While it was hard for someone to relate to someone who had a lot more emotion in 22 years of life than someone who had 850 years of repressing them, Yoda, though, always made an effort to try and listen to Skywalker, and that would be the same case here. Anakin told Yoda about his feelings, how he felt he was just a pawn in a larger game, and while he was pivotal in bringing balance to the Force, what Maul said to him made him feel as if he was just a ball being played with by the Sith and the Jedi. He continued saying that the entire trip back, he just stared into space. Ahsoka couldn't even get through to him. He felt so abandoned by the Jedi and betrayed by Palpatine. Yoda listened, and then, when Anakin stopped, Yoda spoke up, telling Anakin that he always wanted him to be happy. Receiving Ahsoka wasn't an accident. It was an intention by Yoda and the Council to ensure Anakin's happiness. Yoda then thought for a moment, and then spoke up. He remembered someone that might be a great help for Anakin. Yoda suggested that Anakin visit him daily for the next month. He would teach Anakin how to communicate with an old mentor from beyond the living. Qui-Gon Jinn still existed in the netherworld of the Force. If Anakin wanted to, he could reach out to Qui-Gon and learn from him. Yoda knew that Qui-Gon was meant to be his mentor, and maybe having someone that was so open-minded as a mentor might guide Anakin in the right direction. Anakin's heart was incredibly warmed by this motion by Master Yoda. In the perspective that Yoda shared with Anakin, he really understood that the Jedi really did want the best for him. While many on the Council didn't agree with his openness, they did want him to be the best who he could. Anakin would be back to visit Master Yoda daily. But first, upon visiting his wife, he found out that she had given a healthy birth to 2 twins right after the emergency meetings within the Senate chambers. She didn't want to name the children until Anakin returned. After Mandalore, everything looked up for Anakin. Padme told him that she wanted to surprise him, and surprised he was when he met his children. For the next month, Anakin's life would be completely changed. When he thought he would leave the Order, his faith was restored in that same Order by its eldest member. Anakin's journey in the fatherhood would also reinvigorate him, as Anakin no longer felt constrained by the Jedi Order. Of course, having Ahsoka become a knight only made Anakin a Jedi Master. With feeling more welcome into the Order than ever before, and growing a tight relationship with Master Yoda, who almost at this point saw him as a pupil, Anakin felt his sense of longing replenished as he became more balanced within the Force, and his interactions with Qui-Gon Jinn, which led him to planets across the galaxy, interacting with the wills of the Force, venturing down into caves on Dagobah, with nothing but the Force guiding him. Anakin's change within the Force had Yoda requested he become a member of the Jedi Council. Anakin would be welcome as the youngest member ever elected to Jedi Master on the High Council, continuing to keep his children hidden from the Jedi and teaching them in the ways of the Force in a galaxy free of the Sith and of war. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to George Story, Benjamin Wells, and Jay Hoffman for supporting the channel. Let's hit 2,000 likes on this video so that I can release What If Ahsoka Raised Luke and Leia. If you want to see a video, let me know down below, and I do read all of your comments. Again, I don't do crossovers. Check out the Twitch, community Discord, and Patreon if you want to be a part of the community and support me in other ways. For those of you that do want a free lightsaber, this is how you do it. Go down below. There's a doc link on the pinned comment. You click on the doc, you go to the doc, and you write your handy dandy little name, and then you call it a day. Anyways, back to the story. Let's talk about the story itself. As I venture into doing Revenge of the Sith and Season 7, or mostly Siege of Mandalore stories, I always want to try and create a unique perspective on the story. It's hard. You know, these stories are 50 minutes long, and I try and keep them all fresh. I mean, all of you, some of you are new viewers, some of you are older viewers, and I always want to keep the story interesting. And I thought this one was actually really pretty cool. I'm going to pat myself on the back for this one. I'm very content with how this one turned out because of how different Anakin was perceived. Instead of Anakin just being this major hero, he kind of takes a back seat, you know. Obi Wan, Windu, and Saesee Tiin are heroes because they kill Grievous and they capture Dooku. You know, Shakti and Agan Kolar and I think it was Plo Koon, they take a front seat because they introduce the Senate to Count Dooku, and Shakti and Agan Kolar introduced Padme and her coalition to what Palpatine had done. Well, I think the death of Palpatine can be chalked up to an death. I think Palpatine would have tried to escape, though the combined powers of Force from those 6 Jedi Masters would have been way too much even for him to escape. And, you know, we can't have overpowered people in stories because it makes them kind of boring. And, I mean, there's 6 of the best Jedi in the Council, in the entire Order, that are using the Force to stop this dude. While the clones, on the other hand, I think they're still a bit of unhinged people, how they acted with the Jedi, because removal of Jedi officers from power doesn't have to mean execution. They just executed them for the hell of it. Of course, if you read between the lines, it doesn't have to be an execution. So, I mean, again, I think the clones would have come in trying to, you know, get him to surrender, and then when he tries to jump out the window, or just even igniting his lightsabers, that's like, oh, he's a threat. So the clones are like, okay, he has to die now. Obviously not the Jedi intention, but it gets the job done. Also, it leaves a perfect open for a sequel if you guys want a sequel. Having Maul and Dooku frozen in carbonite leaves so much open room for something else to happen next. But I will save that for you guys to decide. Anyways, if you guys want to join the Space Gulag and our incredible journey together, subscribe. Let's go for 50,000 subscribers. We are on our way there. Let's keep on doing it, my friends. Anyways, I love you all. Spread the love, my friends. And always remember, may the Force be with you.